Prologue. In the fathomless depths of the cosmos, beyond the reach of mortal comprehension, lies a realm of unspeakable horror. The blood pits. It is a domain soaked in crimson, where the very air is thick with the coppery tang of gore. Rivers of blood wind through a landscape of pulsating flesh and jagged obsidian beneath a sky the color of an open wound. This is the domain of Korzul, the Crimson Abyss, an ancient deity born from violence and suffering. Korzul's existence is sustained by the bloodshed and anguish of mortal beings. For eons, the blood gods have slumbered in his realm, waiting for the perfect moment to extend his influence into the world of the living. That time is fast approaching. In forgotten temples and shadowed alleyways, clandestine cults devoted to Korzul prepare blood-soaked rituals to hasten their master's return. The most devout and depraved of his followers pray for the day when the barriers between realms will shatter and the Crimson Abyss will spill forth to drown the lands in slaughter. Arya Vanth strode down the cobblestone streets of Ravensgate, her boots clicking purposefully on the damp stones. The chill mist that shrouded the city swirled around her like tattered gray shrouds. Pulling her coat tighter, Arya quickened her pace toward the hanged man. The tavern where she was supposed to meet her childhood friend, Liam. He had sent her a cryptic message, begging her to come at once. Fear and worry gnawed at Arya's insides. Liam had always been a troubled soul, prone to dark moods and flights of fancy. But recently, his behavior had become truly erratic. He spoke of dreams, nightmares filled with visions of blood and shadow. He had become furtive and distant, vanishing for long stretches and offering only vague explanations. Arya feared Liam had fallen in with a bad crowd, or worse, succumbed to the same madness that had driven his artist father to take his own life. The dingy entrance of the Hanged Man loomed ahead. Arya stepped into the smoke-filled tap room, scanning the patrons for Liam's tall, lanky figure and mop of unruly black hair. But he was nowhere to be seen. Arya sighed and took a seat in a sticky booth. She would wait a while longer, nursing a mug of sour ale. Liam had never been punctual, even at the best of times. An hour ticked by, then 2. But still, Liam did not appear. The coals of worry in Arya's gut flared into flames of fear. Where in the hells was he? This wasn't like Liam. He had sounded so insistent, almost desperate in his message. Just as Arya resolved to go searching for her friend, the tavern door banged open. Liam stood framed in the entrance, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wide and glassy. His gaze found Arya, and he rushed over, practically collapsing onto the bench across from her. He looked haggard, with dark smudges beneath his eyes, and a sickly pallor to his skin. "Arya, thank the gods you're here," Liam gasped. "I don't know what to do. I'm in deep trouble." "Slow down, Liam. Take a breath," Arya said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the anxiety twisting her stomach. "Tell me what's going on." Liam dropped his gaze to his trembling hands. I can't say too much, but I got involved with some people, a group. I thought they understood me, that they could give my life purpose, but it all went wrong. The things they want me to do. He shuddered. Arya leaned forward, trying to catch Liam's eye. "What sort of group? What do they want you to do? Liam, please, I want to help you, but you need to give me more than vague hints." "I've already said too much." Liam shook his head. "I shouldn't have contacted you. I'm putting you in danger. I need to go." He lurched to his feet. "No, wait!" Arya reached across the table to grab Liam's wrist. "You don't get to drop a cryptic bomb like that and then run off. I'm your friend, your best friend. Whatever trouble you're in, we can face it together." Liam hesitated, then sank back into his seat, shoulders slumped. "You can't help me, Arya. No one can. I've gotten myself entangled in something dark, maybe too dark to escape. The people I'm involved with, they're more than just a group. They're a cult." Arya felt a chill slither down her spine at the word cult. She'd heard whispered rumors of strange sects operating in the shadows of Raven's Gate. Whispers of blood sacrifice and eldritch horrors. She'd always dismissed them as spooky stories, but the haunted look in Liam's eyes told her that whatever he'd gotten mixed up in was no mere tale. "Start from the beginning," Arya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Tell me everything." As Liam began to recount his tale in a shaky voice, Arya felt icy tendrils of dread wrap around her heart. She sensed that her friend had stumbled into something far more sinister and dangerous than she could possibly imagine. And that by reaching out to her, he had unwittingly drawn her into the nightmare as well. Over the next few weeks, Arya watched Liam deteriorate before her eyes. He grew increasingly gaunt and twitchy, prone to flinching at shadows. He spoke less and less. But when he did, his words were tinged with a feverish intensity that unnerved Arya deeply. Liam spent most of his time locked away in his crumbling apartments above the old curiosity shop his late father had once run. On the rare occasions he emerged, usually for his shifts working as an orderly at the asylum, he moved with a distracted air, ashen skin and clothing reeking of incense and burnt offerings. Arya knew she needed to uncover the secrets of the mysterious cult that had ensnared her friend. She began to haunt the dusty stacks of the city's libraries, poring over tomes of forbidden lore and faded fragments of uncanny manuscripts. She shadowed Liam through the crooked streets, keeping watch with a heavy knot of unease growing in her gut each time he slipped furtively into the mausoleums of Greyman's Hollow, or descended to the stagnant Undercity with its reeking canals. The deeper Arya delved, the more dread-steeped enigmas she turned up. Whispers of a blood god with an unspeakable name, sheaves of ghastly woodcuts depicting rituals of gore-soaked exaltation. She amassed a trove of folklore, furtive accounts of an outre volume called the Crimsiniad that was rumored to contain the blood-inscribed commandments of the sanguine deity. Yet, for every scrap of eldritch knowledge Arya uncovered, the mystery only seemed to deepen. The abyss of horrors gaping wider and wider, like the ravening gullet of a ravenous leviathan rising from midnight seas. The more she learned, the greater her sense of skin-crawling unease grew, as if the very act of shedding light on these dark secrets left her tainted. Although Arya knew the path she had chosen was twisting into an abyssal maw of hells, she could see no other course. For Liam had already been lost in the labyrinth, and she could not abandon him to the monsters that lurked in the midnight catacombs of this tenebrous cult, even if that meant descending into the insanity-inducing abyss herself. Shrouded in a moth-eaten cloak, with the hood drawn low over her face, Arya crept through the crepuscular streets as threads of silver fog unfurled in her wake. Her heart palpitated in her chest like a winged thing trying to hammer free of a cage. Tonight, she would infiltrate the very heart of the ghastly sect that had ensnared her friend. After weeks of tailing Liam through the city's mildewed underbelly, Arya had finally discerned a pattern in his furtive forays. Every new moon, he would descend to a moldering crypt at the heart of Grey Man's Hollow, carrying a bundle that reeked of grave earth and blood sacrifice. There, he would meet with other furtive figures, all cowled and oozing the same miasmas of delirium and damnation. Arya knew that tonight, under the unnaturally sanguine moon that oozed through the smog like a blood clot, the cult that she now knew called itself the Crimson Clave would gather to conduct their most profane rites, and she intended to bear witness. She followed Liam at a careful distance, every nerve stretched taut, every sense honed to a preternatural razor pitch. The fetid reek of the canal stung her nostrils as she descended a lichen-veined stairwell to the catacombs. Ahead, guttering torchlight spilled from a half-rotted door embossed with eldritch runes that made Arya's eyes ache. Liam knocked on the accursed portal, 3 slow, then 3 swift. It yawned open, and he vanished into the fane of profanity beyond. Arya drifted closer, like a leaf borne on a miasmal current. At the threshold, she hesitated, heart a roaring surf in her ears. To step across that threshold was to abandon all hope, to plummet into an abyss antithetical to sanity. But for Liam's sake, into the abyss she must go. Arya slipped into the crypt, joining the congregation of cowled cultists. In the eldritch glow of the chamber, she glimpsed details that seared themselves into her shuddering mind. The jagged obsidian altar, its surface engraved with a tangle of glyphs that burned like embers. The stone vessels burning with ichor so dark it seemed to devour the light. At the front of the chamber loomed a figure swathed in funeral vestments, tall and terrible, their face obscured
by a crimson mask fashioned to resemble the aspect of some abominable entity. Arya knew with a bone-level certainty that this must be the avatar of the blood god, the conduit that siphoned Korzul's insatiable hunger into the mortal sphere. On the altar, something lay shrouded in a winding sheet, soaked with old blood. Dread coiled up Arya's spine as the avatar extended a corpse-pale hand, and, with a flick, stripped away the cloth. A piercing scream slit the air. A human scream, torn from a throat choked with horror. And Arya realized it was her own. For displayed on that slab of desecrated stone was a human form, and as the shadows shifted, Arya found herself staring into the face, the dead, milky eyes and rictus grin of someone she recognized. Someone who had disappeared from Arya's tenement under mysterious circumstances a week ago. Arya's missing landlady. Murdered. Mutilated. And now offered up to the Crimson Abyss as a blood sacrifice by his deranged disciples. Arya's mind reeled, darkness veiling her vision. She felt her blood roaring in her ears, drowning out the guttural chanting of the cultists. She wanted to scream again, to flee this fane of horrors and never look back. But she was frozen, as if the seething shadows had turned her marrow to ice. And then the shadows billowed, and a shuddering, elongated figure unfolded from their depths. A figure with a body that writhed with pulsing veins and dripping claws. A figure whose viscid crimson eyes pierced Arya like a sacrificial blade, searing through her mind and heart and soul. She knew viscerally, instinctively, that she was staring into the gaze of Korzul himself, or at least the fragment of his essence that the blood rites had drawn into this blood-anointed fane. Those red vortexes, bright as fresh carnage, bored into Arya, stripping her will and memories, peeling back skin and sinew and sanity until she was flayed to her keening core. In that endless, annihilating moment, impaled on the bloody gaze, Arya knew two things: that the Crimson Abyss saw her. It knew her in all her raw and shuddering totality, and that there would be a terrible price to pay for her trespass into this realm of sanguine shadows. Then Korzul's avatar stepped forward, black robes billowing, A blood-stained blade glinted in one corpse-pale hand. The other lifted, a single skeletal finger, uncoiling from a fist to point directly at Arya. "Interloper," the Avatar intoned, their voice at once a whisper and a scream. "You dare to profane this hallowed rite with your unconsecrated presence. You who have not been anointed in the blood of the abyss? Foolish mortal, you have called the gaze of Korzul upon you. And now, you shall pay the price." At these words, the cultists' drowning chant rose to a keening wail. And as one, they turned to face Arya. Their eyes lit with the red rapture of bloodlust. Beneath their hoods, in their hands, blades dark with sacrificial ichor glinted like shards of midnight. They advanced, a noose of doom tightening like a fist around Arya's heart, and she knew that her next breath might be her last. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs as the cultists closed in, their blades thirsting for her blood. The Avatar's crimson eyes bored into her, stripping away her defenses, her will, until she felt like a fly caught in the web of some abyssal spider. But even as terror threatened to overwhelm her, Arya's gaze darted desperately around the chamber, seeking some means of escape. There, a narrow alcove, half hidden behind a drape of moth-eaten velvet. If she could just reach it. Summoning every shred of courage, Arya lunged forward, ducking beneath the grasping hands of the nearest cultist. She wove between the shadows, her cloak billowing behind her like the wings of a desperate bird. The cultists howled in outrage, their footsteps pounding after her, but Arya did not dare look back. She flung herself into the alcove, pressing her back against the dank stone. The cultists raced past, their cries echoing in the vaulted chamber. Arya held her breath, not daring to move, hardly daring to think. But then a hand clamped down on her shoulder, and Arya nearly screamed. She whirled, her heart in her throat, and found herself staring into a familiar face. Liam, what in the hells are you doing here? Liam hissed, his eyes wild beneath his hood. I could ask you the same thing. Arya shot back, her fear boiling over into anger. Liam, this is madness. These people, this thing they worship. Can't you see it's evil? Liam's gaze flickered, and for a moment, Arya glimpsed a profound terror in their depths. You don't understand, he whispered. The Crimson Abyss, Korzul. He sees into the very heart of you. He knows your darkest desires, your deepest shames. And he promises to fulfill them. To elevate you. All you have to do is give yourself to him utterly. Arya shook her head, horror and revulsion knotting in her gut.
Listen to yourself. This isn't you, Liam. You're not some thrall to a bloodthirsty god. You're my friend. And I'm going to get you out of here. Away from these monsters.
But even as the words left her lips, Arya knew it was futile. The look in Liam's eyes, that fevered, fanatic light, it was the gaze of a man possessed, body and soul. The friend she had known, the bright, vital boy she had grown up with, he was gone, devoured by the insatiable hunger of the Crimson Abyss. Liam's grip on her shoulder tightened, his nails biting into her flesh even through her cloak. "I can't let you leave," he said, his voice quavering. "You've seen too much. Korzul demands a price for your trespass. You must be consecrated, anointed in blood and shadow." Arya wrenched away from him, bile rising in her throat.
No, I won't let you drag me into this nightmare. I'm leaving, Liam. And if there's any shred of sanity left in you, you'll come with me.
She turned to go, but Liam's hand shot out, seizing her wrist in an iron grip. "I can't let you..." But his words choked off as Arya drove her elbow hard into his solar plexus. Liam doubled over, wheezing, his grip slackening. Arya did not hesitate. She bolted, plunging back into the main chamber, and found herself face to face with the avatar of Korzul. The towering figure loomed over her, robes reeking of blood and shadows. Those crimson eyes flayed Arya to her very soul, and she felt her will, her very identity, beginning to unravel like a skein of moldering yarn.
"Foolish girl,"
the avatar hissed.
"Did you think you could escape the gaze of the blood god? All who look upon his crimson majesty are forever marked, forever his."
The avatar's skeletal hand shot out, faster than thought, faster than fear. Arya tried to twist away, but she was a minnow caught in the jaws of a shark. Those fingers, cold as the grave and strong as iron, closed around her throat, lifted her off her feet as easily as a child's doll. Arya kicked and thrashed, black spots exploding across her vision. She clawed at the avatar's wrist, but it was like gouging at marble. Her lungs screamed for air, and she could feel her pulse slowing, her struggles weakening. Through the closing tunnel of her darkening sight, Arya saw the obsidian blade rising in the Avatar's other hand. The edge glinted like the blood-drenched fang of some eldritch beast. It hung suspended for a moment that stretched into eternity. And then, almost gently, the Avatar lowered the tip to the skin of Arya's chest, directly over her thundering heart. A shock of cold, so intense it burned, radiated from the point where the cursed blade touched her flesh. Arya convulsed, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The shadows seemed to coalesce around them, thickening into a cloying, syrupy miasma that poured into Arya's nostrils, her lungs, her pores.
Now,
the Avatar intoned, their voice resonating from the very walls, the very foundations of the earth.
you shall be consecrated in the blood of the abyss. You shall bear the mark of Korzul, and through the curse of Crimson, you shall be irrevocably bound to him.
The blade pressed forward, parting skin, drawing forth a beading of blood, black in the guttering torchlight. And as the first drop welled and fell to anoint the stones, Arya felt something within her shatter. A wall crumbling, a floodgate opening to allow the eldritch tides of Korzul to come pouring in. She was drowning, she was burning, she was being flensed and flayed and filled, the blood of the crimson abyss replacing her own. The tenebrous thoughts of the blood god entwining with the fibers of her being. The curse etched itself into her marrow, her mind, her soul, branding her irrevocably as Korzul's own. When the Avatar released her, Arya crumbled to the floor, shuddering, retching bile and shadows. She lifted her shaking hands and saw, to her uncomprehending horror, that her veins pulsed with a bloody, eldritch light. The mark of the maw burned on the skin over her heart, pulsing in time with the slowing thunder of her pulse.
rise, Arya Vorn, chosen of the Crimson Abyss.
The Avatar commanded.
Rise and take your place among the faithful, for you belong now, body and soul, to Korzul, and his hunger shall be sated.
And though every fiber of her being screamed in silent horror and negation, Arya felt her blood-soaked body rise, an awful sense of purpose, of dark exultation, flooding her hollowed mind and heart. For she was chosen, anointed and awash in the blood tides of her God's glorious purpose. And that purpose would drown the world.
The days that followed passed in a blood-soaked haze for Arya. The curse of the Crimson Abyss had sunk its barbed hooks deep into her mind, her soul, until she could no longer distinguish her own thoughts from the whispering hunger of Korzul. She moved through the crumbling streets of Ravensgate like a wraith, cloaked in shadow and reeking of the grave. The mark of the maw throbbed on her chest, a live coal embedded in her flesh. It pulsed in time with the dark rites and blood offerings of the cult, each fresh sacrifice sending a shuddering wave of ecstasy and revulsion through Arya's branded soul. She knew, with a numb sort of horror, that the cult was preparing for something immense and terrible. A ritual that would rend the very fabric of reality, allowing the full might of the blood pits to come pouring into the mortal world in a deluge of carnage and madness. And Arya, the chosen of Korzul, would be the vector for this annihilation. She tried to fight it. In those rare moments of lucidity, when the blood fog lifted from her mind, she clawed at the mark until her nails cracked and her flesh was slick with her own blood. She whispered desperate prayers to gods she had long ago abandoned, begging for deliverance, for absolution. But it was no use. The curse was too strong, Korzul's hold on her too complete. She was a puppet, dancing on strings of blood and shadow, and her every twitch and shudder only drew the moment of the final ritual closer. Arya's only solace, bitter and tainted though it was, lay in the fact that she would not face this descent into damnation alone. For Liam, her once dearest friend, had been appointed as her guardian, her jailer. He was to prepare her, body and mind, for her role in the great rite. Under his watchful eye, Arya was bathed in the blood of innocence, anointed with the ashes of desecrated graves. She was forced to consume the flesh of the sacrificed, to drink deep of the ichor that pulsed in Korzul's veins. With each dark sacrament, she felt herself slipping further and further from the light, sinking ever deeper into the crimson abyss that yawned within her. And yet, even in the depths of her debasement, Arya clung to a single, stubborn shard of hope. For she had seen, in the moments when Liam thought her insensate with the blood trance, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a hesitation, a tremor in his hands as he painted the glyphs of sacrifice upon her skin. It was a slender thread, gossamer thin and stained with the blood of betrayal, but it was all Arya had left. And so, in the depths of her hellish metamorphosis, she nurtured that thread, fed it with whispers and glimpses of the boy Liam had once been. The friend who had shared his secrets and dreams with her, who had wept on her shoulder when his father passed, who had sworn with all the fierce conviction of youth that he would always stand by her side. Arya prayed to whatever dark gods might be listening, that somewhere within the blood-soaked husk Liam had become, some ember of that boy still lived. For if she could kindle that ember, fan it to life with the breath of their shared past, then perhaps, just perhaps, she might have a chance of breaking free before the Crimson Abyss claimed her and the world forever.
The night of the final ritual arrived, cloaked in a miasma of dread and anticipation. Arya, her body anointed and her mind drowning in the blood trance, was led by a procession of chanting cultists into the heart of the great mausoleum at the center of Grey Man's Hollow. This ancient place, with its soaring vaults and shadow-draped crypts, had long pulsed with power both eldritch and malevolent to those with eyes to see. It was here, the whisper said, that the veil between worlds grew thin, where the blood pits pressed close against the skin of reality, yearning to break through in a gout of carnage. And tonight, with the crimson moon hanging swollen and gibbous in the sky, that thinning would reach its apex. The Crimson Abyss would place its own chosen vessel, pour the essence of its dread lord into mortal flesh, to walk the earth and drown the world in a libation of blood, to slake a dark god's thirst. Arya, numb and detached, barely registered the journey through the labyrinthine crypts. Her blood-painted skin seemed to hum and throb to the tempo of the cultists' chant, an atonal droning that reverberated in her hollowed marrow, her curse-scarred soul. She was vaguely aware of Liam's presence at her side, his hand on her elbow, both guide and jailer. The procession wound ever downward into the Stygian depths, where the bones of centuries slumbered in their stone wombs. The air grew thick and stifling, reeking of must and moldering parchment and the copper tang of ancient blood. They passed through vaults where the cracked shelves slouched beneath the weight of grimoires bound in human skin, where shriveled relics pulsed with a phosphor glow in bell jars filmed with grave dust. And then, at last, they emerged into a cavernous chamber that Arya knew with a dull, dream-like horror would be the site
of the ritual, of her dark apotheosis. The crypt was a shadowed, vaulted expanse, its crumbling walls carved with writhing bas-reliefs depicting scenes of slaughter and debasement, of figures, both human and horribly other, locked in a savage bacchanal of blood-drenched ecstasy. At the chamber's heart squatted a massive stone sarcophagus, its lid graven with a figure that made Arya's curse-addled mind recoil. It was a hulking anthropoid shape, but horribly elongated, with far too many limbs that jutted at twisted angles. A gaping, fang-filled maw split the figure's head like an axe wound, and where eyes should have been, only dark, weeping sockets stared out from the pitted stone. It was Korzun, ancient and implacable, the blood god of the Crimson Abyss, and tonight Arya would take the eldritch essence of this horror into herself, become one with the devouring dark. The cultists formed a circle around the sarcophagus, their painted faces skull-like in the guttering light of their blood-hued candles. They swayed and droned, the air shivering with the eldritch resonance of their chant. And then, like a nightmare made flesh, the avatar emerged from the curdled shadows. Robed and cowled, with only the crimson gleam of its eyes hinting at the horror that pulsed beneath its dark vestments. In one gnarled hand, it clutched a blade of pitted black stone that seemed to devour the light, leaving only a womb-like afterimage pulsing in the gloom.
The hour is come.
The avatar intoned, its voice a razor-edged whisper that sliced into Arya's mind, drew beads of icy sweat from her curse-branded flesh.
The crimson moon hangs gravid and sanguine, ready to birth a new era of blood and shadow. And the vessel, anointed and athirst, shall drink deep of the abyssal ichor and open the way for he who devours.
The avatar's cowled head swiveled toward Arya, pinning her with the daemon bright gaze.
Step forward, chosen of Korzul. Bare your breast to the altar blade. Let the sanguine scion take root in your hallowed flesh.
Arya, her will subsumed beneath the curse-spawned tide of blood rapture, found herself moving forward as if in a dream, her bare feet whispering against the clammy, lichen-crusted flagstones.
The circle of chanters parted to let her pass, their voices rising in a shuddering crescendo. She reached the sarcophagus, the stone lip cold and rough beneath her palms as she braced herself against it. In the polished obsidian of the altar blade, she glimpsed her reflection. Skin pale as parchment, eyes pits of shadow, the mark of the maw livid and pulsing on her breast. Then the avatar loomed over her, the blade poised above her heart like the fang of some colossal viper. The chanting spiraled higher, an atonal shriek that flayed the air, and Arya found herself slipping away, the curse greedily dragging her down into a yawning abyss where crimson tides pounded against shoals of shattered souls. Arya felt the black kiss of the blade on her flesh, a cold so intense it burned, felt her blood welling up to anoint the altar stone. The chant hammered the air. The avatar's eyes blazed like the pits of hell, and Arya surrendered herself to the ravening dark. A voice, cutting through the sanguine din like a shaft of light piercing the Stygian gloom. A voice achingly familiar and echoing with a desperate, defiant humanity. "No," Liam cried. Arya, come back. This isn't you. This isn't us."